If you're struggling to get some wins in Caldera, don't worry, you're not alone, and lots of people have messaged me asking the same question. How do I win in Caldera? How do I get better? And what do I need to change? Now, Caldera is a very different map from anything in the past in Call of Duty Warzone, and in this video today I'm giving you guys all the tools, techniques and tips you need to get some wins in Caldera. These tips should also help you rack up a fair number of kills, because they put you in advantageous positions that will lead to better games generally. So let me give you a quick rundown of what's changed in Caldera. The first one is Verticality, the second one is Defendability, the third one is Rotations, and the final one is Hardpoints. These are the 4 critical areas in Caldera that have massively changed in this map, and things that you'll have to adapt to or you simply won't get any wins. Verdansk was more of a cobbled together battle royale map that didn't really work in the grand scheme of battle royale. Caldera, however, is a very traditional battle royale map, and if you've played a lot of PUBG in the past, this is going to be right up your street. The first major change is Verticality, and you absolutely have to factor this into your playstyle. Now, in American football, most coaches will say that the lowest man wins when you make a tackle, and the same applies here except the opposite. The highest man in Caldera always wins. You always need to be in a position of vertical superiority, and always in a position that offers cover in a higher ground location. No matter what the circumstances, be it the center of the zone, the edge of the zone, moving into the zone, anybody who is in a higher, more vertical position is always better off, because they're able to track your movement, prevent you from leaving a situation, and able to keep tabs on what's happening in their surroundings. Verticality is a massive asset in this game, and it's something you need to cater towards. Don't be going for buildings on lower ground, don't be settling for cover in lower positions, and always be aware that somebody could be above you at any given moment. If you're working your way up a hill, there's a good chance there's somebody at the top of that hill, and that's the position that you will need. Caldera is going to make you fight far more often for positions, and Verticality is one of those. The only instance where Verticality is less important is only in the very final circles of the game, where taking a hard point or position with heavy cover in the center of the zone is more beneficial to an area of Verticality. But even then, somebody higher up can still probably beam you, given the right circumstances. So unless you're just trying to slip by some gunfights unannounced or, hide away from certain situations, you should always be looking for the most vertical position. It's going to lead to more gunfights, and you're going to have to fight together more as a team to maintain those locations, but it's absolutely worth it. And there was a great clip from a recent video where I managed to beat a 1v3 in the final circles, just because I had the height on the opponents and knew exactly where they were coming from and where they were rotating to. The next major change in Warzone and in Caldera is Defendability. Now, when I'm talking about defendability, I mean whether or not a location is really as defendable as it appears. Now, in Verdansk, you were gifted with lots of areas like rooftops with one entryway, or a tower that only had one ladder to get to it. And very seldom did you find yourself in a situation where there was a building with multiple entryways. And this was a flaw of Verdansk, because it basically handed people cheap wins and cheap kills because they could lock down a location very easily and didn't really have to work for it. And this isn't the case in Caldera anymore. Every single building, bar a few, in Caldera has multiple entry points, multiple zip lines, multiple hatches, multiple stairways, and every building reads to that. Even the basic farmhouse buildings that are out in the open have, jump up points so you can get up to the side of the building and into the second floor. Staircases on both the inside and the outside of the building. So the traditional idea of something being defendable has been completely ripped up to pieces and thrown away. Defendability in Caldera is much more difficult to judge, and you need to look around for buildings that really cater towards that playstyle and team play. Ultimately, in Caldera, the situation has changed. You can't defend an entire building anymore. You can't defend an entire rooftop anymore. What you need to do is segment that gameplay into smaller locations. And you'll also need to be more reactive as a team in order to counter threats to your position. The simple fact of the matter is that with multiple entryways means multiple areas of breach, and with that happening it means multiple opportunities for teams to get into your situation, and you're gonna have to fight them. Again, a running pattern in Caldera is simply the fact that this map and mode is going to make you fight players more often to maintain superior positioning. So when you're looking at defendability, verticality is important. You definitely want one of the most vertical positions, but you also want a position with minimal entryways. Now, let's say for example you're in a 2-story building, consider just locking down the top floor, because there'll be less entryways to the top floor than there will be to the bottom floor. Single-story buildings with just ground floor levels with multiple windows and doors aren't very defendable, but very large complex buildings are defendable if you just decide to lock down a small area of it. There are lots of great examples of this on the airfield and in the capital, where ultimately you're not going to be able to defend the entire building, but you could lock down the very top of the roof, or maybe the top floor, in order to maintain your position. On the top floor of certain buildings within the capital, there is a fire escape on the outside of the building and an internal staircase, and that's pretty much it for entryways, and sometimes a couple of other jump up points. But as long as you as a squad are locking down that location together, you stand much more of a chance of maintaining that position than you do with something that has multiple entryways that is very easily penetrable and accessible. It's very easy to become isolated in undefendable buildings. You know, you think you're in a squad of 4 and you're all safe because you're in roughly the same area, and then suddenly 3 guys run up on one of you, and then another guy takes out another guy, and you suddenly become very isolated very quickly. So you're going to have to play far more compact, and you're going to have to focus on defendability. You need to look for situations and locations with the most height and the most minimal amount of ways to get into that area. And even if you just lock down a room or two with 1 or 2 entryways, that's far more beneficial than locking down a rooftop that has 6 entryways. A lot of these buildings in Caldera will trick you into a false sense of confidence because there are just so many ways to actually get into those buildings, and people will clock onto this and start wiping squads out of buildings. The next part of your game that you absolutely need to change is faster rotations. The zone in Caldera collapses more quickly, and also in the zones you'll notice that when the circle decides to choose a location or choose a point of interest, it has very distinct areas that are beneficial to players and very distinct areas that are very bad for players to be in. Towards those final circle collapses, it becomes very obvious the good positions and the bad positions, and rotating faster to those positions is critical to getting wins in Caldera. If you're not moving quickly enough to secure these locations earlier, then you're making a mistake. And even just being in a location where you can rotate faster is also beneficial. A lot of the reasons that I land on peak or I land on areas with high verticality is because I can very quickly transition to a different location with parachutes, whatever it so happens to be. And rotating faster is just critical in this map. There's no other way I can stress this. You absolutely need to move faster as a collective. Because as you engage in each gunfight, let's say a gunfight lasts a minute, maybe 2 minutes each, and then maybe you get third pied, and that's another minute or 2. Suddenly you go from being maybe very central in the zone to being not central at all. And if you want to lock down key positions that have a verticality or defendability, you need to move quicker throughout the map to make that happen. You need to be more willing in this map to break away from a bad engagement or a situation that's not quite looking like it'll go your way or is a bit of a toss-up, and move to the faster rotation quicker. It's more beneficial as a player to move ahead of a squad who has to get into a zone than facing them head on. It's better to move into locations that have more verticality, defendability, and are on the way to the circle than face those guys one-to-one right where they are. And my rule of thumb is this: if you think you're going to hold out a squad, make sure it's in the last circles of the game. Because in the early circles of a game, it's all well and good you holding out a squad, but I can guarantee you that there'll be another squad ahead of you also holding them out, and then another squad ahead of that holding them out, and it becomes a very mishmash situation very quickly. My final pro tip is to quickly identify hard points in the final sector. Identify places that are good places to be it an area that's really high up or an area with really high defendability, and move to that faster than usual. In situations where the final circle makes that really good position obvious, go for it. But in situations where you find yourself out in the open in Caldera, which happens a lot, be willing to wait. Now, if you're in one of those weird scenarios where the circle is just this wide open stretch of land, the ultimate opportunity in terms of hardpoints is to get as much cover as you can, but be willing to edge the zone during this situation. You don't want to be the person in the middle of the zone because you very quickly find yourself being the filling in the sandwich, and that's something you want to avoid. But securing those hardpoints in the final circles is a really good way to win matches, and something that if you combine with verticality, defendability, and faster rotations, you'll see yourself doing more of, and you'll see yourself winning more games. So that's it for this video on Caldera, guys, and if you aren't subscribed, feel free to drop one. We're on the road to 100k, and it would mean a lot to me. This is a very complicated map, and if this was helpful to you, leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll do absolutely more of these to help you guys get more wins in Caldera. As always, folks, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in another video.